Yeah, well, I suppose there's different layers to that. So, I mean, one of the reasons that we set up Talamh Beo in the first place was because we found from a lot of the discussions that we were having with different farmers together that the message or our voices weren't being heard. That there wasn't, that the discussion around food and famine was always about production. It was always about the big dairies and the expansion and the industry and the agribusiness, and actually that the voices of people on the ground who were actually doing the work, who were actually trying to create sustainable livelihoods, those voices weren't being heard. And so we set up Talamh Beo to say, look, there's another model of food and farming here which is going on, which people are practicing, which people are working on in their day-to-day lives, and we want to represent that, and we want to talk about that, and we want to actually present that as an alternative, because in some ways I think it's superior to the existing model. A lot of things that we can do, in terms of food production, in terms of building soils, in terms of enhancing biodiversity, in terms of restoring ecosystems, in terms of regenerative agriculture, are as good or better than anything that the conventional system has ever done, without any of the negative impacts on the environment or on people's health. So it's a political choice, and I mean at the moment we're in a system which has been set up to really benefit agribusiness rather than people and communities. And we have to recognise that. So we have to recognise that like the last 40 years have seen a series of measures and institutional legal instruments being put in place which favour a model of agriculture which is damaging. And if we want to develop a model of agriculture which is let's say restorative, regenerative, which has a positive impact and which can actually rebuild some of the things which we've broken, we're going to have to change some of those legal instruments. And we're going to have to set up new criteria and new institutional recognition for new types of farming models, because what we've done over this last period is dismantle local markets. So local production is something which is ignored by the existing agricultural policies, and in that case there's also no kind of institutional recognition of a local producer. So a farm like the farm that we have here, which might be 5 acres of land, and all of the produce that comes out of this farm is going directly into local markets, has no legal criteria, has no legal recognition, and has no kind of box that we can tick and say that's what we do. And until we have that, it's very difficult for us to get any of the supports. It's very difficult for us to get any of the let's say, legal recognitions that you might want as a farmer. As well as that, it's very difficult for young people to see the pathway into that kind of livelihood. So I mean, the only proof they have is a few people who have pushed it and tried to make a go of it, etc., etc. They don't actually have a recognition from the structures that we've set up in our society to do this kind of thing, to say, yes, there is a status of local producer that you can have a livelihood from producing food for your local community, that can be something that you can choose to do with your life, and it's a positive thing, and you can enhance the biodiversity, you can provide a healthy food for people, and that's a profession, and it's as important a profession as the accountant or as the solicitor or as any of the other jobs that people are encouraged to do. So there's a whole new generation there that needs to learn that lesson, and we're there to try and help them along the way as Talamh Beo, demonstrating that we have alternative ways of production, demonstrating that there's livelihoods that you can build on the land which have a positive environmental impact and which have a positive social impact. So it's a big struggle, and there's a lot of elements to it, and I suppose how we use the land is also the most fundamental thing which defines us as a species. So it's not just about food production, it's also about like where we get our energy, it's about where we get the fibers to produce the clothes that we wear, it's about where people spend their time, and how people where people get fuel for their houses, or where they go when they need exposure to the natural world, or and it's about providing spaces for all of the interconnected ecosystems that surround us to have space to survive and to thrive and to prosper. So it's to simplify all the complexity of the natural world and the land into production of as much dairy or as much beef or whatever, and agribusiness is losing not only, let's say, a very important collectively owned or collectively managed, our inheritance, our heritage, the environment is something that belongs to the future. It doesn't even belong to the present. So it's not only to lose that, but also to lose a little bit of what makes us human, because human beings, have only gotten as far as we've gotten. Has only gotten to the point where we can do all this exploitation through building a balanced relationship with nature. So through most of our history, human beings have survived on the land with relatively little impact, and there's plenty of examples of peoples who can still do that. And I still believe that it's a possibility. But at the moment, our entire sort of society, our economy, and in many ways our culture, our mentality is going the other direction. And so we have this mentality of exploitation, that the land is there to be exploited for our use. And part of that's due to our history, because in Ireland we've only had that as a lesson. We've had exploitation of occupiers in Ireland, the exploitation of an empire exploiting our land, extracting resources from it. And the only lesson we had while they were extracting resources was that the land is for survival. So we think the land is for survival, or land is to be exploited. But there's another way. So there's another way of dealing with the land. The land, if we look at the land as something to be nurtured, then all of a sudden those two other uses, exploitation or survival, become so much less important. And it makes us think about, how we farm, and think about, how we spend our lives and how we spend our time in the land in a different way. And there's still lots of people, I think, out there who have that perspective and who are trying to promote it. And again, that's what we're trying to do with Talamh Beo, is to show that there is another way. It's not just exploitation, it's not just survival, it's a dignified livelihood. And that's what we want to try and demonstrate.
That's brilliant, really well put. Do you want to just say a minute about Via Campesina? Just when you first encountered them, just because I'll have it on the.
Yeah, sure. So Via Campesina is the international movement of peasant farmers, and they're present in I think 130 countries, or I don't know, 70 countries, 130 organizations, something like that. But they are a global movement of people who are, trying to farm in that way that I'm talking about, and who are trying to build sustainable livelihoods on the land. And Talamh Beo is the only Irish member of Via Campesina. So what we're doing in Talamh Beo is also linking into that bigger family of people who want to try and sustain land-based community life, and who are trying to kind of show that that we can provide for ourselves, our communities, our cities in sustainable ways, rather than using agrochemicals and pesticides and GMOs and all those things which have huge environmental impacts. So Via Campesina is about international solidarity. It's about saying we're not alone, and even though farming can be a lonely occupation, it's important to remind yourself that there's other people who are doing the same thing as you, who are struggling, fighting the same fight. And that's what Talamh Beo do at an Irish level as well, as we say, look, it's not just you who are working away here, and it's a lonely furrow. There's someone just up the road from you. There's someone in the next county. There's someone in the next province. There's someone up in wherever it might be, and they're doing the things for the same reasons. So when we set up Talamh Beo, it was also because we had a shared sense of what we were trying to achieve, and that makes us all stronger. And so if you imagine Talamh Beo can feed off that, we can feed off that at an Irish level. We can also feed off it at an international level, because all of the people, if I can go to France and I can go to, there's people over there who are working in the same way, there's people in Africa who are working in the same way, there's people in Latin America, there's people in America, there's people in Canada who are all kind of pulling in the same direction. So that should give me strength, and it should give us all strength to it. And it reminds us as well that the reality that's presented to us on a daily basis, in terms of this is the way things are and this is the way things should be, it doesn't always represent the full picture. And building those links directly, building those links with farmers on the ground, building those links with people who are doing the work in other places, just reminds us again that we're going the right way, and we just have to keep on working. So working, it sounds like a lot of work.
I was pressed up there. That was brilliant.